There we go, I'm back.
And we are good to go. Hello, everyone. Young people. We interact with them daily. Some of us see glimmers of hope for the future in them, while some of us see ineptitude. Whatever we choose to see, the fact remains that their actions, their words, and even their thoughts are a reflection of our behavior to each other and to them as the children. This brings us to a rather distressing fact. WHO studies indicate that 1 in 7 among the youth have mental disorders. Depression and anxieties are leading cause of illness and disabilities among them. Does that speak about them or does it speak about us? Therefore, this talk is crucial for parents, educators, and employers of youth. Since understanding the challenges that young people face is essential for providing support and creating environments where young people can thrive. And after all, they are the future that we would inhabit, and also the future for this planet. Therefore, it is highly important that we take care of them. With that, I would like to welcome you to the Rejuvenation Fest by G100, Oneness and Wisdom. G100 is an influential group of 100 women, and it has been founded by the visionary leader, Dr. Harbin Arora Rai. 100 women across the globe representing 100 different areas for advocacy, impact, and awareness. And under the leadership of Jennifer Randai, we are the wing of oneness and wisdom. And today we are here to talk about youth and why they deserve better. Hello, I'm Nuthan Manohar. I'm the founder of Me Met Me. I'm a well-being researcher, faculty, and coach who loves deep conversations, exploring cultures and cuisines. And delighted to introduce you to my guest, Emer O'Donnell. Emer O'Donnell has a background in psychology with over 20 years of experience working in global organizations. She has a master's and MSc in behavioral change coaching, is the author of the book Understanding Teen Stress and Anxiety, a parent's guide to building love and connection. And she's also a parent of 3. Emma recognized the gap in young people's education way back in 2016, and so she went on to found TeenReconnect, a coaching and training company that proactively gives young people, through her unique personalized programs, the tools they need to navigate our uncertain world, a world that has been made uncertain and rather difficult once again by our actions. It is about supporting them to know their unique talents and strengths, and so that they can play to their strengths and create a life that they love. And ultimately, that is what we want for them. Emma now focuses all her work on empowering young people, supporting parents and training professionals who work in the youth space to be able to create meaningful connections and relationships, emphasizing the importance of developing well being first for sustainable performance. Emma wants her work to guard against stress, anxiety, depression, and tragedies like suicide because she believes that young people, their families, and professionals working with them deserve better. And with that, I have a question to you, Emma. Emma, what is the urgent need to discuss the challenges faced by young people, and what really inspired you to focus on this specific area?
Okay, I think it's a great question because we have a tsunami coming over the horizon, and it's been coming for a while. And you highlighted some of those, mental health problems that young people have. And if we don't catch it much earlier, we already have a bottleneck the other end in terms of treatment. And for me, it's about empowerment rather than leaving it till it's too late. So we have to start being more strategic in how we empower young people, because we have completely changed the environment in which they're growing up in. It's a bit like kids used to be able to, run around, be free, be out in the outdoors. And now we have children that can be on screens for 8.5 hours a day. It's so important that that doesn't happen in terms of them being able to regulate who they are. And so for me, I saw a significant gap in terms of young people understanding how they navigate their way through the noise. So I retrained as a behavioural change coach, came out of that process thinking, oh my God, coaching is phenomenal. Why didn't I learn this as a teenager? Nobody is teaching this to young people, and they need it now. And we definitely need it now, because education doesn't deliver this. We don't teach about love. We don't teach about relationships. We don't teach about all these fundamental things that affect both our physical and mental health. And they are the future. And if they're not healthy, we don't make healthy decisions. And we certainly need to be making smarter decisions than we have been in the past for our future, in terms of, the quality of lives we can have, the quality of interactions we can have, and also the quality of our home, which is the planet.
Thank you, Emer. I mean, I really like how you put the word, tsunami, because yes, we're not really seeing how the numbers are really building up. And we would always think that it is happening elsewhere. But very clearly from, your experience working with youth, and even my experience working with youth of various backgrounds, all the way from some of the best minds to the ones who are really underprivileged, you can see that there is a lot of, areas where they are greatly challenged. And these are challenges that were not even considered as a problem maybe in our generation, probably because we had support, probably because we were more resilient. But here we see that, they need support. And there is such beauty about them. I mean, I choose to be the person who sees glimmers of hope, because when I interact with youth, I see beautiful ideas, beautiful minds, how they're so passionate about inclusion, how they're passionate about the planet, but then they are lost. And the number of youth, even the ones who are really successful and outwardly successful on paper, are going through a lot of issues. And it is amazing that you have chosen this specific area to work with that. I do have the question about, what do you think is preventing young people from flourishing? From someone coming from a previous generation, or even if I take inputs from those behind us, they would be like, what do they lack? But then you do see that they are having problems. So what do you think is the reason why they are not flourishing and thriving?
Okay, so the reason is because we are not designed for the data overload that we're currently getting, hooked up to screens, social media comparisons, not allowed to run free. We teach them from a very young age, especially in developed economies, that the externals, in terms of the environment they live in, is a scary place, because we don't let them run free because we're scared something's going to happen to them. And, if you've got stressed and fearful adults, that's what you create in your children. So bit by bit, I certainly, when I was growing up, would have learned, built confidence by being out by myself, being able to run around, being able to experience daily life, being able to organize my summers, being able to play with my friends for real, rather than needing to feel the need to hide behind a screen to be something that I'm not, because you couldn't fake it back then. You had to show up. And so I think that's where a huge amount of the pressure is. They also have immature brain, 80% mature. And, that's always been there. But when you bombard it with all the noise, which is what I call it, when you don't have that inner knowing of who you are on the inside, because unfortunately we don't teach that, and they don't then have the skills to be able to calm things down. And when we can't calm things down, we're in fear. We start to get stressed. We don't take action. When we don't take action, then we don't achieve. Then we feel stuck. It just becomes this, constant cycle of feeling. What I see most of is overwhelm. They come to me and they're overwhelmed. They just can't work their way through the noise. And so by helping them understand that and who they are on the inside, you can clear away what I call the debris. So imagine it as a funnel over your head, and you're able to just kind of narrow the information down so that they can actually start to resonate about who they are, what makes them happy. Because if you don't know who you are, you can't create a life you love. but we all have the skills to create what we want. And we only have to children for that. They're full of joy, they're happy in the moment, they create, they're not worried about anyone else. All these fears we learn, and we have to unlearn them.
True, Emma. I mean, it's amazing that you brought in the point of technology and device screen time. Just earlier today, I had gone on for a hike, and I remember when I was a kid and I would go for hikes, there would be other children also. Today, I was a bit surprised to find most of the people, I mean, who were coming in were much older, and rarely, I mean, hardly any children. Of course, the number of children that is are there is also come down, but the fact is that you do see a huge disconnect from nature. So something that would help me, and I would often try to make sure that youth I train with, they start connecting with nature, because it's an amazing way to just restore and release all the stress that is built up. We primarily forget that there is a biological being. We are so much in our head and in our devices and our screens that we forget that there is a biology to us, and that biology requires that nature. So having that connect with nature, even if you feel okay, your children have grown up fairly well, even if you can still take them out, they can actually start benefiting, showing them that there are avenues beyond the screen to be able to relax and to have a good time, makes a huge difference. So thank you for bringing that in. And I also wanted to know your opinion on when you said about devices, is it also technology? Because you would see that there are now say lawsuits going against Meta, Facebook, Instagram, because they kind of have algorithms which will hook a youngster and get them stuck on the platform, so much so that they can't step out of it, they get addicted. So do you feel that there is a lot of dysregulation when it comes to how we could responsibly give platform or technology to youth and children?
I think it's like everything in life, it's balance. I know certainly from my work, there's so much conflict is created in the home because of technology. We don't see it like, nicotine. We don't see it like alcohol. We don't see it like a drug, but actually it is. If you think of an iPhone, it's actually like a hypodermic needle. And people are giving it to 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. I think in some ways because it's an easy fix, because it is addictive, it is attractive. It's this shiny, device that has all this moving stuff and noise and music and everything. But while we got our heads stuck looking at the world, we're not creating in the world. And neither are children developing those connections with their parents. We're primed to learn from the other humans around us. Not, you can learn a certain amount from screens, but it's the relationships and there's the relationship skills which are fundamental to both our physical and mental health. So in terms of what I would say about, devices, it's very easy to give it. It's a lot harder to take it away. And you shouldn't be surprised then when your children don't want to give it up. Equally, because we don't let them run free with their friends. The only way they want to connect, they can connect with their friends is through devices. And certainly as teenagers, their peers are so important to them. So we have created this. It's almost become like a tangled web. Unless we're going to find ways of getting children to be engaged with their friends, getting them out into the outside, just as you said, and also understanding if you give it to them and then you do, that's an unrealistic expectation. It's like weaning them off a drug. So you're going to have to, be aware of that as a parent and not beat them up because they just can't put it down.
I love the way that you compared it with like a hypodermic needle. The fact is that, the reason why parents do give a device to a child is most often because, one, they themselves do not have the time or the patience, and I do understand that because they are going through a lot of stress themselves. So the easiest thing that they can do and the safest thing according to them would be to give a device. They're not, I mean, they do not expect it to go bad, but then in the long run, it does. And unlike a drug, when it comes to a child working with a device, they know that they're safe. They're not, running around. They're not falling, tripping over. They're not getting into big kinds of trouble. They forget the part where there is, cybersecurity and all. I mean, the issues related to cybersecurity. But the fact is, it's an easier thing to do, and they also become the good parent by giving something that the child likes. So thank you so much for sharing that, and that was in detail indeed. And I can see Jennifer messaging us that how do we educate parents then? How do you think that you can educate parents about giving devices? Because I mean, if that is one problem that we are really facing, because if children are or youth are not so flourishing owing to excess addiction to devices, how do you wish that parents learned about this?
I think it's really important to educate, because I think often new things come into our world and we don't necessarily know what the impact is till later. But there's a lot of research out there now saying how addictive they are. I think it's also about parents being aware of their own behavior and being aware of their own stress. Empower your children, get them to do things. I get my kids to clean up. I get my kids to be responsible. I get my kids to make decisions. I get them to help me out. And I think sometimes when we're parents, we're so busy trying to get things done quickly, we do it ourselves. And then it's, we'll just give them that, it'll keep them quiet. But believe me, in the longer term, it's a short-term gain for what I call a longer-term pain. Be aware of your own stress. Be aware of what's really important in terms of, making the time to have meaningful relationship with your kids. Spending that time, really learning how to actively listen to them, know how your feedback can impact them. All of those things, because otherwise we will create a generation that is kind of got adopted and learned helplessness, because it's like we don't trust them to be able to do stuff. And when they're under our feet all the time, we don't get a break. That's the other thing.
Absolutely.
So get out, get about, just limit screen time. This is a story. I had a story with my son, and I don't have major screens or games or anything in my house. And we went to his friends' houses, and they used to play games, and I wasn't happy about that. And I said to the parents, when we come for the children to play, not for them to play on screens. So can you respect that for me? Otherwise, he won't come. So then we came home, and he started wanting to go on screens. I let him do a few games, but I could see a change in his behavior really quickly, because he's a very competitive child and he likes to win. And I said to him one day, he wouldn't come to the dinner table. He wouldn't do whatever. He was starting to sneak and get up early in the morning to be on the device. And I said to him, can we sit down and can I just tell you what's going on? And I explained to him, and he looked at me and he said, oh, I didn't know that, Mum. And he said, please take it away from me, because I don't want to be like that. Because I said to him, where do you have the most fun? When you play with your friends, play sport, or when you're stuck on a device? Which one makes you feel better? And he is a sports scholar. He said, it's the sport, Mum. So he actually made the decision, because I gave him the right information for him to make an informed decision. I said, do you want to watch what everyone else creates in your life, or do you want to create your life? And he said, I want to create my life. And I said, well, if you spend hours day in, day out when you're older on screens, playing games, you're not going to be creating what you're here to create. And he said, okay, take it away. Help me. So, and that's what we did.
Thank you, Emer. I mean, that kind of brought in this whole insight that I also had when it comes to India, because in the recent UN's happiness index, India scored very low, and especially among youth, the numbers were very low. And I think UK is also pretty low for a developed country when it comes to happiness. And ironically, I live in Netherlands, where we have the happiest children on earth. Now in India, I think, when you say tsunami, I think there's a big problem that's coming up, because even according to the government statistics, 1 in 2 children are sexually abused.
Mm.
Okay, so you have a huge amount of sexual abuse going on, and on the other hand, there is a whole addiction to devices going on. And when you brought in this whole conversation with your son, something that struck deep is because in conversations among youth in India, the main point that they come back with is, but there is nobody listening. It's like
Mm.
there's nobody listening. If I speak, I'm going to get into trouble. If I speak, it's just going to make things worse. So it's better that I shut up and play with my device.
Mm.
So it's amazing that you bring this point up, because I think if you're taking that device away, what are you going to replace it with? And over again, our studies show that deep human connections are that one thing that we need. It's not food, it's not exercise, it's not sleep, it's that one main thing that we need to flourish. So making sure that we can develop the ability to listen and to empathize and therefore connect at a very deep level, not going around fixing problems, but actually just having that patience to listen. So thank you so much. And Emma, with that, I would love to, I've been being very keen to ask you this question. Of the various, conversations that you had, interviews that you had with youth, you have identified 6 key areas that need to be addressed so that youth can flourish. Can you help us understand those 6 key areas, and why those and why not something else?
Well, they're those because they're the ones that they told me they needed. So I
Okay.
spent over 1,000 qualitative research hours with young people, and I said, "What is it that you need help with now?" I was developing something that's called a Q Pathfinder, so that they could understand who they are, because I knew that bit of their education was missing. And that's an interesting picture of me on the screen. There you go. So the key things they need is understanding about me. Who am I? What are my strengths? What are my talents? What makes me unique? Because we're all unique. And so when you know that, you shouldn't really even want to be like anyone else, because there's only one like you. How can I build more strengths in terms of my behaviors? Because we all have strengths and gaps. And we need to build more for those challenging situations that we can find ourselves in. They want to know about, how do I build confidence? What motivates me? They want to know, how can I find learning easier? They want to know about how to navigate stress. They want to have a sense of where they fit in the world. So, how am I predisposed to in terms of jobs, careers? And also they want to know that, not relationships, because they didn't like that word, it was people. So how can I get on better with people? Because, we're social creatures, we need to be connected. And when we're not, poor relationships, we all know what it's like to go into a home when our relationships are not positive. Our heart sinks as we go through the door. And that is one of the most significant factors, both to affect our physical and mental health. So we have to be teaching these skills, because they're getting lost because people are hiding behind screens, and they're not interacting for real.
Thanks, Emer, because so I teach at a management institute as well as a medical college back in India, IIM and JIPMA. Again, some of the most brilliant minds of the country. Again, there too, the administration would reach out asking, let's create a course for them. One part would kind of, I would make sure that, I fit into what they want. But a huge portion of it is actually asking the youth, asking the students, what is it that you really need? And you realize that, what they need and what, the adults think that they need are in two different directions. One would say that, okay, I don't know how to have fun. And the other one would be saying, okay, they don't have enough discipline. Okay. And if you ask the question, why don't you know how to have fun? You come back to the point of, because I don't know who I am. I have never explored much. I don't know what my strengths are. So, for instance, again, nature. I'm scared to go out in the nature. Have you been there? No. Then how do you know you're already scared? You should give it a try. So then all those questions, actually, you realize that, there's a whole part of them that really wants to know themselves better, connect deeper with themselves. And that's beautiful. And you find that there are various ways that they can, identify what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And therefore, and once they know their weaknesses, they know how to kind of, handle it. And thankfully, most of the youth that I work with, I mean, compared to maybe even my generation, they are far more intelligent. Once they have a problem, they know how to go around solving it. So very pretty nifty that way. But just that maybe the part that they are missing, the shadow, or the dark part, would be who are they themselves, identifying themselves. So thank you for having that as a very important part of the 6 key areas that you want youngsters to work with. And the next question I would wish is, based on all your insights and studies and your experiences with youth, what do you wish parents knew? What is the top tip that you would have for parents?
So this is something that my 4-year-old said to me when we were backing the car into the driveway. He said, Mum, it's all about love. You just have to fill your heart with love. And as a parent, we always have to ask ourselves when we're engaging with our children, are we coming from a place of our fear or from a place of true unconditional love? And I think that can get rid of a lot of the baggage that, we can't help but bring to the party because we've inherited it. But the trick is to try and heal that in ourselves before we pass it on to the next generation. And because we hang out with kids so much more now, the second greatest need we have is after breathing is to give feedback. We do it on average every 3 hours, if not more. But we often do it really badly. So, how many times a day do you say no to your kids? How many times a day do they suggest something and you just, dismiss it? How many times a day do you just tell them that they're doing something wrong because it's just not the way that you would do it? And because if we're in fixing mode and rather than what I call connection mode, you need to be in the connection mode. And you need to realize when you're stressed as an adult, you're responsible for that. And you need to find ways to manage it because you will pass it on to your children. And they didn't come into the world to absorb our stress. They came in actually, I think, to teach us how to live again in a funny kind of way. Because we forget that as we grow up, we just, we absorb all these experiences, some good, bad. We have prejudice, we have unconscious bias, we have all that stuff going on. Children don't tend to have much of that. They learn it. And so for me, it's your job to nurture them. It's your job to help them understand who they are, to find their strengths and talents so that they can go out into the world to be who they need to be. Because, with AI alone, 40% of the jobs that are around at the moment are going to disappear in 15 years. So don't force them to be, a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist if that's not their calling, because goodness knows what's ahead of us in terms of what's going to happen. So, and also because those professions, certainly doctors, dentists, are one of the highest for suicide. So be careful what you wish for with your children. When we are in our thrive zone, when they're able to create, when they're able to turn up as their authentic selves, then that is the greatest gift you give to your children, and they'll love you unconditionally for it.
Okay, Emer, for a moment I kind of lost your feed there. I hope you're not. Okay, yes. Emma, I think I loved the way you brought in this paradox because on one side, parents and children are spending more time together than ever before. Children don't get spend time with other children playing and having unstructured fun time, but instead they're spending a lot more time with parents, and in the process, it's actually creating a disconnect, a dissonance, because it's not improving the kind nature of relationships. And as you rightly pointed out, this is because we tend to give feedback in a wrong way. We forget that they are children and then we are adults. And, not everything needs a feedback. Let them learn things on their own. But of course, I mean, when you mention it, I kind of, thought back about the last 3 hours and how many feedback did I give. And I gave a lot of feedback. Oh my God, I gave a lot of feedback. And also something else that you spoke of, kind of reminded me. I mean, I don't have children. I used to have dogs, and they were rescued. So I remember my dog psychologist, a dog trainer, he kind of telling me, do not, use the my dog's name was Rossi. Don't use Rossi's name and add a no to it. His name should always be things that are positive. So do not call his name and say something negative. And I remember it striking me like as something so beautiful. And I remember doing that. And then I would turn around and look at parents with children, and they will be like, the name, and it's always a no. And even very recently, I remember asking a mother, like, how often did you appreciate the child? How often did you find something good? And how many times did you, point out a mistake? And I kind of gave her a habit tracker. And she was surprised to realize, I mean, again, see, none of us are doing it out of malice or bad intentions. We are stressed and we don't know what to do either. We are learning on our way. And you would see that, when you start tallying it, it doesn't make sense. And automatically, this, behavioral changes start to happen. And likewise, again, another, something, I mean, when it comes to studies on mindset, a beautiful insight that came in was that, instead of appreciating intelligence is something that they may already have. Appreciate the effort. So even if they fail, even if they do it poorly, when you appreciate the effort, you're kind of, helping them to do something more instead of pointing out the mistake or, maybe the intelligence or lack of it, maybe. So that, as in, that could be the best way to start giving feedback about all the effort and, and giving a very real picture of, okay, not expecting everything to go hunky dory all the time, keeping them, helping them understand that life can be uncertain, that you don't have to win always, but that, keeping on and ensuring that you put in efforts can make a big difference. So that was beautiful. But the most important thing I wanted to share was, your son sounds very wise. If at his age he could say that all we need is love and connection, I mean, I think all our, greatest research findings would say the same thing. Ultimately, we need love and connection. And your
Indeed.
wise son was able to say that, identify that, and say that at a young age. And if we actually spend some time to meditate on it, I mean, ultimately, what we need is love, connection, and validation. And if we can get that and give that, it's going to be a much, much better place. um, Emma, I have couple. Yes, Emma, you were saying some.
I was just going to say, and also being able to have a voice. I think that's so important, because sometimes we believe that we don't have one, and giving the space for someone to have it. And certainly in terms of feedback, what I've done is I've put all the skills that I use as a coach, because I think, you coach, I coach, but a lot of people don't coach, and they don't have those skills in their toolkit now. And if you're hanging out with your kids all the time, you need to know how to communicate with them. Otherwise, you're going to do some damage. And so that's what I've done, is I've put them all into, a book that I did recently, because I really think that's so, so important that they have access to those skills. But I was also going to say that, empowering kids to have a voice is vital. And if we don't listen to them, we shouldn't expect them to listen to us.
I can see a lovely point from Natalie Forrest, PhD. She's speaking about overcoming negative self-belief to find a voice is important. Would you like to elaborate on that, Emma?
Well, I think, doesn't everyone want a voice? You talked about, we want love, we want connection, we want to be heard. And I also say Mother Nature gives us a really good indication of that, because we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we should listen twice as long as we talk.
When it comes to the Chinese characters for listen and hear, so, I mean, I don't have the exact number, the details, but it's something like, when it comes to hear, it has the character for the ear and the gate. But when it comes to listen, it has the ear, a thousand heart, and an open gate.
I like that.
And
I like that.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Natalia also has a question. How do we help if their family does not support them? Oh, important question.
Okay, so I talk about something we know, certainly for teens, because that's my area of speciality, that if they have what we call one good adult in their life, it doesn't necessarily have to be family. It has an amazing impact in terms of the positive impact on their mental health, in terms of their self-belief, in terms of their ability to be able to navigate through the challenges that they find themselves in, and in terms of building resilience. When there's an absence of a good adult in a young person's life, that has really negative effects. It increases the level of depression, self-harm, stress, and suicide. So I would say that, if a family doesn't support them, you need to find another good adult in the world somewhere in their environment, within their community. I don't know if Natalie if she might work with other children. You need to find them somebody that they feel that they can go and talk to, someone they can trust. I call it the lighthouse adult rather than the helicopter adult. So they're there for them, because part of the journey of being a young person is that you're going to fail. It's part of the journey. Only I know in my lifetime, my parents didn't see how much I failed, because I was out and about, and they never found out. So that was good. And but they are going to fail, and they need to have someone they can talk to. You don't want them talking to people who don't have the right information, so that they make good decisions. And I always say, if you can think of somebody that you used to talk to when you were a teen, that you felt you could trust, someone that you felt safe with, someone that listened to you, someone had your back, that's the kind of person you need to find for them.
That's beautiful. Lighthouse adult. Emer, I mean, when I think back in life, and when you mentioned it, it's like, yes, there was a lighthouse adult, and that made all the difference. I, dread to think what I would have turned into had I not had that one person. So maybe many times, not all of us are blessed with the kind of family that can be very supportive. In such cases, having access to that lighthouse adult is so important. So we have this campaign coming up in my district where I'm from, back in India, and it's called Keku. It means to listen, because we realize that people, I mean, especially youth, are not being listened to. And one of the things that we want to experiment with is, we've realized that chances of a young person going to a therapist or a coach is very low. But in Kerala, chances of them going for a haircut is very high. And for some strange reason, and I'm pretty sure this is true even in UK, the ones who cut our hair, the barbers, the stylists, are pretty good listeners. So what we plan to do as the third phase of our campaign is to train barbers and hairstylists so that they can be active listeners and support the youth. And the beauty of it is, I mean, we come up with this idea, and then someone tells us that they have actually done this in US, and through, I don't remember the number, I think maybe a few thousand barbers, they were able to reach over 1 million youth in terms of being that lighthouse adult. So I think, I mean, even if we are not a parent, and maybe we are an educator, maybe we are an employer, but if we can be that lighthouse adult where there is stability, calmness, and also this ability to see the potential and be empathetic, I think that's going to be amazing for youth out there, because it's not been easy. It's not easy for the youth out there. They are, I mean, I don't envy the youth. Normally, people would look at the young and say, oh, I envy them. But when I look at them, I honestly don't envy them, because I see the pain that they experience and how little access that they have in terms of support. Even though we would like to think we are providing it, the ones who need it aren't getting it, and at least not getting it in the language that they understand, in the ways that they need. And because of that, I really, appreciate your efforts in finding out from youth as to what are the areas that they need support in. So there's another question about, can you elaborate on the lighthouse adult? Our listeners are requesting more information. What are the traits of the lighthouse adult, Emer?
Okay, so in some ways, it's very much like being a coach. That's why I took the skills, because I work with so many young people and parents, and I was spending as much time talking to the parents as I was the kids. But often parents send the kids to me thinking the kids are the problem. So I'm going, no, it's both of you have to develop skills. So it's like being a coach. Actively listen, understand how feedback works. Good feedback works. Appreciate what your bad day behavior is, because we all have a bad day behavior and that can be measured. Understand what baggage you're bringing to the party so that you don't become, a smothering influence rather than an enlightening influence. So that lighthouse parent is, if I liken it, it's the person that they're prepared to call when they're at the lowest, at 3 a.m. in the morning, and they feel no fear. You've got to cultivate that on a daily basis. I've spoken to young people and I've said, which of your parents would you call? And the parent who's angry, they will never call them, because they often beat themselves up enough anyway when they screw up. So it's something you do on a daily basis. I mean, we can all get angry, but it's also being able to say sorry when you get it wrong as an adult, because we don't get it right all the time. And letting your children know that, that you do get stressed and it's not their fault. You take responsibility for your stuff. So for me, that's what a lighthouse parent is. Somebody who can be responsible for themselves, in some ways, who demonstrates all those really positive characteristics that we want in our children, but which we often don't do ourselves.
Beautifully put, Emer. And you kind of said that, it's important to learn coaching. So I tend to, I'm sure, including you, we tend to straddle expert and the role of a coach. So as an expert, we would know the solution and we tell them the solution. Okay. But as a coach, we ask them what is the solution. We don't focus much on the problem. So when you start focusing on the problem, it's a different scenario. But here we start, as a lighthouse adult, and when you speak about it, and when I think back, they ask us to, look at, okay, what is the solution we need? And if they are a coach or if they're adopting the coaching style, they would ask the youth, what is the solution, or how do you think you can get to the solution? As an expert, I tend to have an way of pushing, this is how you go about and do it. But as a coach, you pull back, you step back and ask them, okay, how about you? And I think that's the way a youth should be led. So as a lighthouse adult, maybe instead of focusing on the problem, seek out what is the solution that they want and ask them to figure out, okay, what should they do, so that they start actually feeling much more stronger. You're empowering them. I think that's going to be a fantastic way to look at it. We have one. Yes, Emma, you want to do?
I was just going to say one thing that's really important. Say if they mess up over something, rather than, even though you might want to scream and shout at them, it's going to do no good. It won't land, because they'll just go into withdrawal and they won't listen, because that's just part of our human nature. It's about talking to them through the story, what's happened, why do they think it happened, what would they do differently now? And also it's about prepping them in some ways. That if you can think of a situation, if you're a teen and you go to a party and you might drink something or have too much to drink and there's no one to take you home, what are you going to do? So that they don't end up like rabbits in the headlights, because their brains, the prefrontal cortex, is not operating on old batteries, it's not. And so if you can give them stories and scenarios that they can work through and examples, how would you behave? It means then they have little hooks that they can hang that on, and also knowing that they can call you no matter what. I don't think any parent wants a call in the middle of the night to say that their child isn't alive anymore. And there are many parents who get that call because they've decided to take their own lives. So your big job is not getting them into a big job. Your big job is to keep them alive during this period. And to try and help them regulate their stress and their emotions, and so that they can find their joy. If you do that, you'll have succeeded, because there's a whole lifetime to catch up on other stuff. And it's also really important to know we have 3 intelligences. Well, we might have more, but there's 3 key ones. There's IQ, which shows you can pass an exam, and it might get you to the interview, but it doesn't mean that you'll get the interview. The secret sauce of top performers is emotional intelligence and what I call executive intelligence. That's being able to see the detail that's in front of you, connecting the dots and getting it done. If you're in a place of stress, you focus in on the fear. You don't focus in on all the other information that's available to you. It makes you less creative. So teach your children to find their joy and not to live in fear, because they will be the creative beings they're supposed to be.
Beautiful. We have one last question. I wanted to add something more, but I think this question is very important. What happens when parents feel out of their depth to do this? What is your recommendation?
I would say upskill, go and learn. I mean, I'm not trying to plug something I've done, but I've written a book so that they can go and upskill. That's why I wrote it, because I could see that they were struggling. You need, in the same way we need our young people to understand who they are, parents need to understand who they are too. This is a journey for both, because, when they're younger, we parent them in a different way. But when they start to be teens, they want to leave us. They're programmed by Mother Nature to leave the nest, okay? And so they're going to want to extract themselves from us and find out who they are. So it's as much as a learning for the adult to be able to adapt and change their relationship as it is for the young person. And with anything, we've got to learn. We've got to upskill. We've got to understand about communication. We've got to understand about connection and how to build more positive relationships, especially if we're going to hang out with someone much longer than previous generations had to.
Yes. There's a hiking, quote that, it's not the mountain that you conquer yourself. And when it comes to parenting, I think you are ultimately sculpting yourself. So yes, all of us would start out of our depth, but upskilling and, sculpting ourselves to be able to, take on a young life that's going to represent our future. I think that's the greatest adventure that you could have. And I'm so glad that, we could have this discussion. Emer, it's been a fantastic discussion with you, and I can't believe that time just flew. And I have to thank you for this insightful discussion, and thank you to the audience who's been, pitching in with comments and questions. It's been fantastic. It's been really interactive, and I would love to, extend my gratitude not just to Emer but also to Jennifer for organizing the Rejuvenation Fest. To learn more about Emer's work, please do connect with her on teenreconnect.com. And once again, thank you, Emer. Thank you, Jennifer Randai. She's the global chair for G100 Oneness and Wisdom. She's been a fantastic leader who's been, making sure that we have events such as these where we can, share and create awareness on problems that we are actually going through. Thank you all for joining in today, and let's hope to continue working together to ensure that the youth receive the support and opportunities that they deserve. They deserve so much more from us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.